for coding. So for me, I don't know what context or what's the context behind the question, but I'm going to answer this in a general sense, and share my thoughts about LLMs specifically for aiding during the programming process. So for me, it's fine, but of course there's a lot of caveats here. I personally use coding assistants and ChatGPT at work, while I build features or when I'm bug fixing. But there's varying levels of usage when it comes to AI. I don't adhere to the notion that it's either you use it or you don't. It's going to be a spectrum. Okay, at least for me, it lies somewhere in between. And again, it depends on the situation. What problem are you trying to solve for? What particular task are you currently doing? So we've experienced this now here in our company, and I've also shared this during class at OPET. How the question was, how does AI affect your work, your everyday life? So I shared that, in which we are noticing some of the juniors relying heavily on the code being generated by AI. And I think that's the worst use of AI in terms of programming, is to just rely on it and trust it 100%. And I've told everyone this in our team, especially the juniors, that relying too much on AI and it's in the code that it generates without actually checking, trying to understand what it's doing, is going to hurt you as a developer. Not only, for that particular feature, but your career in general. And I'm not even referring to the studies of AI actually harming the way we think. Because like they said, the mind is a proverbial muscle. So if you don't exercise it, it's going to, what's the term? Atrophy, I think. It's going to shrink. But I'm thinking more of, in the way people trust you. So if you keep churning out AI slop and the quality of your code isn't up to the standards of your team and of your company, especially of your leads, that's going to, or people will start having less trust in your pull requests, in your work. So now, I don't know if my team is watching my vlogs, but I am now more guarded when it comes to reviewing PR pull requests of juniors. I want to make sure that there's no AI slop getting through. And that's the opposite of what you want your seniors to be doing. You want your seniors to actually start trusting your pull requests, your code. So instead of doing that, now your seniors are trusting you less. And it's going to really hurt your career. So if you're a junior, and if you're watching this, make sure that that doesn't happen to you. Okay, so with that said, where does AI really shine? So currently, as a lead here in our company, I am tasked with coming up with software architecture for solutions to our problems. How do we design the schemas? How do we coordinate, architect the services that would be needed to make this particular project or feature happen? So I admit I don't have all the answers, right? So especially at the beginning of a project, and there's still, the problem has been defined, but the technical solution hasn't been fleshed out. So that's my responsibility. So at that start of that project, so the business requirements are put in my desk, sent to me. I try to read through it, then try to picture how could we build a system to actually support this, a scalable system. So at the beginning, of course, often you would experience, what they call mental blockage. You couldn't think of anything. If you put out a document in front of you, a blank document, a new document, it would take you, or at least for me, it would take me a lot of time before I could actually start fleshing out the details about the technical solution. But that was before ChatGPT, or that was before LLMs came around. So now with LLMs, I just fire up ChatGPT and start asking questions. Okay, so I'm thinking I have this problem. Of course, I try to abstract out details about our company. You don't want to put sensitive information into that LLM, or it might leak out to, I don't know, into the internet or even to OpenAI, which I don't want to do. So I generalize everything, put out a general problem that's not specific to our project. Then, okay, ChatGPT, I have this problem. This is a general problem. So I want to do this, I want to do that. What do you think? Then, ChatGPT will, or whatever LLM I will be using, will start putting out some ideas. Then a lot of them I already know, and some of them I don't have an idea. I've only heard of it then and there. So, and now, it jumpstarts the conversation and the ideation process. This is what they call the ideation process actually begins. Instead of me staring at a blank sheet of Google Doc, I now have an ongoing, I've already started a discussion with, a chatbot, and that gets the mind going, jump starts the engine of thinking, of the thought process, of the problem solving that would happen to actually make this project come alive, or at least the technical requirements, right? So that's where I really value large language models. They really help me a lot in shortening the ideation time needed to put out an architecture for a particular project or feature. And it helps me flesh out the technical requirements that's needed. It's not going to be perfect, even if especially without AI, a technical requirements doc is not going to be perfect, but at least it's solid. The idea of the solution makes sense, makes a lot of sense. And of course, doesn't always, or whatever suggestion that ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude puts out doesn't always end up in that technical document. Often it does, it does provide some solutions that, like, well, this makes sense. Let me see. Let me research more about that. So in terms of jumpstarting conversations, ideation, helping you solve problems, LLMs are very good at that. At least having that someone to have that conversation with, especially in a remote environment, because we are fully remote. That's really helpful. Without me, taking up another team member's time. Because before I would have to reach out to others to actually form that solution. Now we minimize that. I could have the rest of the team to actually focus on other things, and I could just isolate myself and have that ongoing discussion with the chatbot and flesh out a technical requirements doc. Then when that's ready, that's when I present it to the team and they could interrogate it. Start interrogating the technical document. So yeah, in terms of that, it's very helpful. But in terms of the code it generates, I am very, very careful. I think any artifact that LLMs generate, you have to be very mindful of accepting that as the final solution. So, for example, code or manuscripts, or if you want to generate documents, make sure to take that with a grain of salt. One thing that makes that very, very prone to be bad, in terms of business, or I mean, if it's a simple email that doesn't really email to, for example, here I wanted to generate an email I could send to our building admin, which wasn't really important. Just wanted to inquire about something, so I just left ChatGPT draft it for me. I didn't want to think about it anymore. So for those situations, it's okay. But for things like code, where you are mindful of the business consequences, that the code actually fulfills the business requirements, be very careful with that. Since one thing that people don't understand about software development is the code itself is just the end product of everything. I mean everything, not just the thought process of the engineer. It also needs context on what your business is, any conversations that you've had prior to actually writing that code, meetings, emails, Slack messages, the values of your company, everything, the practices of your team, practices, your coding standards, what is it what's the preference of your lead, of your team. So all of this context is going to be captured in code, ideally. Of course, sometimes it gets missed. context. But in general, a lot of these are being captured in each line of code. So LLMs often don't have that context. No? There are AI tools now that actually drop into code bases and try to understand what's happening here. Tries to load the whole code base into its context. But there's so much that gets lost in the conversation there, or in the code. A lot of the things that's there in the code base doesn't really reflect the decisions that went into it, especially if it's not well documented, which is often the case. Why is it written that way versus doing it this way? Why did we use early return here instead of, if else? Or why is it computed this way? A lot of these contexts, again, aren't really captured in just the code alone. There's often history there, and even humans themselves find it hard to understand code that has been written maybe a year or a couple of years ago because the context is lost. But during that time, it was written in such a way that captures the requirements at that time. No? So you would be lucky if the person who wrote it is still there, or if there's actual documentation that discusses why it was written that way, what were the conversations that led to it, what were the concrete decisions. So unless AI has been there from the get-go and produce an AI tool that can do that, being that actual team member that never forgets context, that's going to be very valuable. But right now, it's not there. And the irony of large language models at their current state is the larger the context window that actually absorbs, the more likely is it to produce hallucinations. It's kind of ironic that it's behaving that way. But I think we haven't really been there yet in terms of my graduate studies. But tuition says that maybe it has something to do with what they call in machine learning overfitting. So with that large context window, I feel that the model is being trained specifically on this data, and the model fits it perfectly. And in machine learning terms, that's actually bad. You don't want to fit your model exactly with your training data or whatever data you have. You want it to generalize even for data it hasn't seen yet. So I think having that large context is kind of similar. I might be wrong since we haven't really touched that yet. I think it's going to be towards the end of the semester. So, but if I had to guess, that's what is happening. Yeah, I think to sum up, if you're going to use AI as coding, one more thing. One thing that I really love AI for is, it's good for auto completion. I use AI or GitHub Copilot, and it's been helping out a lot in generate that block of text so that I don't have to type it anymore. It saves me a lot of time so that I could focus on other more impactful things like architecture, designing stems. So it really relieves me from that, let's say, quote unquote mundane task of trying to type the code itself. But again, caveat there is I already know what code I want. So if it generates something that I didn't expect, I immediately try to reset things, and provide it with a better prompt. But as an auto completion, as long as I know what the code I expect, it's very good in that aspect. But if you use it to generate code that you didn't expect, or you don't know what to expect, which is actually worse, if you don't know what to expect in terms of the code it should be generating, that's going to be dangerous. You'd rather just maybe try to look at the code and try to write yourself, and try to see if it actually fits the problem that you're trying to solve in relation to the context, the whole context of the project and the business requirement. So for juniors, I think especially those that are still not comfortable with the syntax, and actually writing good clean code, don't take the generated code and just accept it as it is. So yeah, let me go to the summary, or recall everything and form it into maybe a concrete advice for people who are trying to use AI coding tool or coding assistant. So one, use it during ideation phase. Try to extract ideas that could help you solve a problem effectively. But don't just stop there. Make sure that whatever ideas that you form during that conversation with the chatbot, you verify elsewhere. There's a lot of documentation. Actually, you could ask ChatGPT, for example, do you have any resource for your suggestion so that I could read further? It would give you often if it's saying the right things, it would always give you where he got it, or he or she got it, or it got it. I'm not really sure. But in terms of the code being generated, as long as you know what to expect, you expect a certain kind of type of code that you could have just written yourself. It's just one code or the AI to do it for you. That's fine. As long as you know what to expect and what to check. But if you're trying to generate code using AI, you have no idea what to expect. Take that generated code, study it, put it into context, see if it actually solves the problem. First, of course, is it performance? Second, is it secure? Third, so just put it there. Then maybe especially if you have other colleagues, have them look at it. I'm not really sure that what this code is doing. Maybe try to maybe explain it to me, or you could actually have the LLM explain to you. Maybe have a follow-up prompt to actually flesh out the solution more. But there are a lot of ways you can go into it. But I think guiding principles is for anything that's generated or any artifact that AI generates, don't just copy, don't just accept it unless you actually know what you're expecting. It's the problem with AI, since this is more about natural language. Its output is very non-deterministic, so you can't really, be sure what type of output it would give out. So yeah, just watch out for ideation. Go ahead. A really good partner in solving problems. So I hope I answered that. Forgot your name, Jim Graf. Thank you for that question, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.